Do you ever find yourself in that place where you feel like it might be too late? Like, the years have gone by, and now that you're waking up and realizing some of the choices you made, they were beneficial, they were a good life, but it didn't like rock your world. It wasn't the life that you really wanted for yourself. Or there are also some of us that really wake up one day and realize we're in a crap life. And yet, we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and we're thinking to ourselves, maybe it's too late. Well, my guest today, Cia Robles, is going to talk to you about how it's never too late to be happy now. In fact, that is her practice in California. She calls it Choose to Be Happy Now. And she has four basic principles that she's going to walk us through today that help you to do just that. Isn't that amazing? I can't wait for you to listen to this. I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s, thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm gonna help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day. Let me introduce you to Cia Robles. She works as an integrated somatic trauma healing practitioner. Choose to Be Happy Now is the name of her 30 years plus private practice. Her formal studies include somatic trauma healing, heart math interventions, hypnosis, holistic nutrition, and body mind energy work. She teaches meditation and her own 4 essential practices, the way to feel good now, a method of reconditioning the nervous system. She is currently working on the completion of her book, The Little Instruction Book with a Big Heart, 4 Essential Practices, the way to feel good now. Cia loves her therapy practice, her friends, all animals, and the ocean and writing. She is happiest being in nature, especially when she is by the ocean or any body of water. Tell me your story. So would you be able to just like tell us about Cia, how you came to be and how you are today?
Sometimes when I speak, I open it like I was born into a family of Hispanics. I My family was a practicing Catholic, and I'm the oldest girl child. So it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out, Cia. It's like 3 strikes against me.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and the reason that I ended up leaving home, being pregnant and getting married, is I couldn't stand being in my house. I hated it. It had never been a fun, pleasant, comfortable place to be. I was a child bride and a child mom, and it happens.
It happens. Lots of us are.
And being the oldest girl child, a lot of responsibility fell on my shoulders. And that began probably in my infancy, where I found myself taking care of my father psychically, not knowing at all. He had had a very sad, pretty tragic. He lost his mother as a young boy. He never knew his father. And so it was a lot of emotional stuff going on. So I became accustomed to taking care of others, right?
Yep.
And so much of it, of course, just felt normal. And a lot of it I really liked. It felt good for when people came to me and I could help them. When I landed a corporate job in gosh, I think I was 2021, that allowed me to get out of my first marriage. So I thought I'd made it, right? Just making a good salary. I could do pretty much whatever I wanted. And even there, I found my way as kind of a leader or maybe a know-it-all. You know, I had really come into holistic nutrition, and I was always talking about nutrition, and people would come and ask me questions, and of course that felt really great. But the corporate setting was not my thing, even
Mm.
though it helped me in a lot of ways. Um, After just 5 years, I said, I can't take this anymore. You know, it was so constrictive. My son when you have a child, your kids need things.
Yeah.
And the boss doesn't care. You know, if
Nope.
you have a sick child or a hurt child or anything, it's like it doesn't matter. And so there's this constant kind of stress. And I met one of my best friends there. And one of the things that had happened was we landed in a department where women were in charge. Women were the supervisors, and we thought, oh, this is going to be great. Well, they were the worst.
Oh
We,
no.
they were the absolute worst. So, it really tainted any desire to want to continue in that type of
Hmm.
setting. I left, and um, I just continue to sort of be and find myself in that spotlight of having lots of responsibility and others coming to me, family, friends. And I had really no sense about what I needed. It was always, always going out.
Hmm.
And even in my first marriage, when we did enter some couples counseling for a little while, um, the therapist, she was very, very sweet. She was a young woman still doing her intern work. She was very sharp. And she pointed out that I had needs too.
Yeah.
And it was like, whoa, do I do? And my husband sat
What?
there and he said, no, she doesn't have any needs. I mean, I could still hear that, feel that as if it were yesterday.
Yeah.
I was like, and I had no clue. It took a long time and many, many, many years of almost constant ongoing therapy, different therapists because of moving or whatever situation, and really trying to grasp that I had needs and what were they? And I deserved respect, but mostly I needed to respect myself. I find myself working in private practice for over 30 years now as a therapist and counselor. And that all started with, once I started to practice, I entered it as a spiritual counselor.
Mm.
And this was something that was really a place that I landed that was really wonderful for me. It was a really good time in my life. I was in my kind of mid 20s, had come through some difficult stuff already. Had already been married,
Hmm.
divorced.
I mean, such a powerful story. And like you said, it's pretty common too that so many of us were culturated and our families taught us this and everything just to be small, to have no needs, to put everybody else first. And we're the consummate caretaker in whatever we do. Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. My second question is what inspired you to start helping women in midlife or just your clients in particular empower themselves?
Yeah. That's a really good question and a big one.
Hmm.
So as I learned, as I was learning and growing and healing, it became very apparent to me more and more that focusing on myself was vital, was critical. And so the ways that I was able to do this in my earlier years was I've always been drawn to nature. So I would spend a lot of time outside, just sitting in my yard, sitting in my garden, hiking. Uh, I love, love, love the oceans. I'd go to the ocean a lot. And that's really what sustained me through that first long period of life where I was a single mom. And then many years later, I became the single grandmother of my granddaughter.
Mm-hmm.
And always, though, drawing to sustain myself also with just stillness and quiet. That became, through meditation or again, just sitting somewhere in a natural setting. And just seeing that how we carry this stuff forward, right?
Yeah.
Looking at my mom, looking at my sisters, looking at friends, looking at clients, and how it was a repeat. With the younger clients, they were repeating what they learned from their mothers. With the older clients, a lot of times they were still kind of lost, kind of stuck, like knowing that they wanted something, knowing that they wanted more, and just really not knowing how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, a client comes to mind. She was probably in her 50s, and she had a pretty blessed life, but she was very unhappy. And she would come in and she keeps saying, I just want to be free. I just want to be free. And in her mind at that point, freedom meant to her, she wanted to divorce her husband. But as we worked together, she found that the freedom was inside of herself.
Mm-hmm.
Her perceptions of what was free and what wasn't free. And then she started to have a lot more peace and joy in her life and recognize that, yeah, the husband wasn't perfect, but it really wasn't about him.
Mm-hmm.
It was about her and what she could do more for herself to make
Yeah.
herself happy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely. So, what are some common challenges that you think the people that you work with are facing?
These are such good questions, Natalie. The common
Thank you. I
challenges.
appreciate hearing that.
I think it's a lot about this compulsion that so many of us, especially women, feel that just drives us. I'm not enough the way I am. I need to do more. I need to give more. And so some of how I use hypnosis in my practice, and that really helps people to start to slow down
Mm-hmm.
because I'm such a believer in stillness and quiet. And that's the opposite of what most of us have been indoctrinated with, right?
Right.
And so sometimes that can, kind of awaken quickly, and other times it takes a lot longer with clients. I'm thinking right now about another client that she was just so busy, so driven. Part of that was her conditioning. And then, of course, she landed in a family situation where she really wanted to leave her husband as well. And this one seemed to be probably more appropriate. However, they had two children and she couldn't trust him with her kids. He didn't pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And she was really worried and she just felt like there's no way I can not be around. Um, and so she was kind of in this frenetic state. And her profession was kind of high powered and demanding, but she just didn't have couldn't find a place where she could settle.
Yep.
And so in doing some work and just really kind of helping her give herself permission to take care of herself, she realized that, oh, I could take my yoga mat to my office and just put it down and just lie there, for 5 minutes And that was a big, awakening for her. It's like, no,
Yeah.
there's no place where I can pause. There's no place where I can stop. And yet there was, and she was able to come to that. I
Mm-hmm.
really, I avoid suggesting. I don't tell my clients what to do. I don't, unless it's this really obvious place where a client needs a little help, I may throw out some
Right.
suggestions, but always like very open-ended, try it, see what this feels like. Often we'll even rehearse in our session so they can explore it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm just a firm believer of there's always a solution. It
Yeah.
may not seem that way at all, and it may not look like the solution we have in our minds. Like it needs to look
Mm-hmm.
this way, right? Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't count. Um,
No,
but
I
there's
think
always,
that sometimes is one of the challenges, right? Is to get over this idea that outside of us is the answer. I like what you're saying, and like you are trying to facilitate allowing women to come to their own conclusion around what that kind of self-nourishment is going to look like, and to tune into their bodies. I can't remember if it was when we talked about doing the podcast or one of the you had emailed me back some of your ideas, and one of the things that you talked about was women have neglected their bodies. I talk about this all the time. Like we've completely divorced ourselves from our humanness in a way, right? That compulsion, to use your word, which is a
mm,
really good way to describe it, of caring for others, kind of supersedes our acknowledgement that we ourselves are a human that also needs caretaking.
in one of my last big trainings, the end, while we were working with energy in the body the whole time, it's a 3-year program, Somatic Experience Trauma Healing
Ah,
International.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the last segment is devoted to touch, to and resonance and attunement. Like really, it's not so much that we're doing it to the client, although that is part of it, but it's really helping people get into their body, sense
Mm-hmm.
what's happening so that we can develop that intuition and really, like you're saying, that we're so often neglectful of like what's happening in my body, right?
Yep.
Until something hurts, until something breaks down, or when we look in the mirror and we're happy to criticize and judge ourselves if we don't look the way we want, but otherwise we don't pay attention.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's why I'm even careful sometimes how I describe it for women, because it is self neglect. However, it's been taught. And then now is such a dissociated experience that they really are literally at a neurobiological level divorced from self awareness of the body. It's not
Exactly.
something that they do with intention any longer. It's something that was
Oh no.
programmed and conditioned into them. So we have to program and condition kind of ways out of that. And
Right.
and my next question is, specifically to women in midlife, what are some of the things that you suggest that women do to kind of step into their own power and build their self confidence and self acknowledgement, and even just compassionate self awareness of who they are as a human?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you really dissect that, yeah, absolutely, we're not doing anything wrong.
Mm-mm.
Never, ever, ever. It's what we learn, it's our conditioning, it's our patterning, and the body becomes habituated
Yeah,
to, so interestingly, ignoring its own self
I
and just
know.
going along with the program. And
Exactly.
what I would like to point out, because so often it's suggested that, well, do yoga, work out, um, get a massage, things like that, and those things are absolutely great. That still does not necessarily put us in touch with our own physiology.
Hmm.
And so, from my perspective, I mean, I may have too much of a bias now on this, but it's what I believe works, and it's what I kind of could want to say, and I know that it works, is it's really
Mm.
getting still, stopping, like, the stop to smell the roses. Are we going to smell them when we're flying by with cappuccino in hand and a list a zillion miles long of what we're going to do or need to be done, is really slowing down, feeling your feet. All of this kind of process sounds silly because it's too simple. And so often, our mind wants complicated. And yet when we give complicated, then it gets overwhelmed and it doesn't do it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Mm-hmm.
so the slowing down, the pausing, the stopping, and even just in that noticing, like, no, I can't do that, or that's dumb, or how is that going to help me?
Yep.
Just noticing this kind of alarm system that goes on, right? I
Right.
survive only when I'm speeding, only when I'm racing, when I'm accomplishing things, then I can earn some peace and some relaxation. But it's actually the opposite. When
Yeah.
we, right, when we center with our own self, recognize what do I really need? What's right for me? And we're only going to come to that when we're still in quiet, because otherwise all those other external voices, expectations, demands are running the show. And those externals match our undercurrent, which, subconscious, which is running the show.
Yeah.
And
Right.
what often I have clients do is become the observer or the witness, and we play with that. Like, imagine uh, you're the director and you're the producer of,
Mm-hmm.
like, this fits right for you, of the story, right?
Right.
And place it up on a stage, put it up on a film screen and change up the characters, like how, not neglecting what is at all, not denying what your experience has been. That's important to do that. And now let's see, how do I want it? How do I want it to continue? How do I
Mm-hmm.
want to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
Play with that and see what happens.
And see what happens. Right. Because if you're looking at those future oriented behaviors, they're not going to be the ones that are holding you back into an old pattern of who you were. They're going to help kind of navigate the future of who you will be. And yeah, I love imagery exercises like that in meditations.
Yeah.
Those are
But
some of
but
my favorite.
the real key here is what you asked about, how we can recognize our bodies, is sensing the energy, right? Sensing the energy, like when I'm on stage and now I'm saying no to something I usually say yes to. How does that feel in your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
Feel your feet, feel your back, feel your arms, you know, notice your breathing, notice your heart,
Mm-hmm.
because people can go get along a lot of, mileage from just visualizing, because that does shift the energy in our body. But when we
Sure.
go directly to the energy in our body, that's really where we ground.
Right. Right. So tell us a little bit about your four-pronged approach, or however you
Mm.
encapsulate that, because I know that's Cia and I met writing in our writers accountability group, and so we're both authoring books, and you're really almost there. I'm so excited. But she has a really great approach that can help us with some of these things that she's been talking about so far.
Okay, thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
So my private practice is called Choose to Be Happy Now. The book title, the working book title, but I think this one's going to stick, is called um, How to Feel Good Now, or the four essential practices, the way to feel good now. And this is pretty much what we've been talking about already. It's the energetic um, method that shifts our perceptions and reconditions, what's been there. So the first practice that I recommend is breathing from the heart center. So we bring our attention into our heart center. And here too, some
Mm-hmm.
people might say, oh, that how do you do that? I breathe through my nose, I breathe through my mouth,
Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm.
right? But it's setting the intention that I'm coming from my heart. And in fact, our heart is the central operating system of our whole being.
Yes.
And when we think about, that's the first organ that developed, not the brain. The brain takes forever to develop, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we give so much power to the brain. It's not there. The heart actually sends afferently more information to the brain than the brain does to the heart and the whole body.
Right.
And just by doing this, when I often I'll say, invite your mind to rest in your heart space, right? Because the mind just wants to keep doing its monkey thing, right?
Right.
Shut up already. So this also helps the mind quiet, or, at least take a little break, or at least we give it something else to focus on. It doesn't
Right.
want to stop focusing, but now we can give it something positive and beneficial to focus on.
Yep.
So
Gave it
that's
a
the first
task.
practice. Yeah, one that actually works for us.
Mm-hmm.
The second is what I call uplifting our mind to goodness. The mind is very busy, thinking about all the stuff from the past, worrying about all the stuff in the future. So I present it this way. Let's upload, right? Let's upload a lot of good stuff, again, to give the mind something consciously to focus on. So,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping it simple, again, nature is kind of the best place to bring in resource. So you looking at the blue sky, or even if it's cloudy, I mean, it's like so powerful, right? It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
The sky is everywhere. We can focus on a tree, on a bird, on flowers, on our animals, and notice, because our body is reacting all the time, all the time. Usually we're just not aware of it.
Right.
So now when we bring something beautiful, something peaceful into our awareness, the body will follow suit with that, and it will naturally calm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you ever have people check in then with their body before, and then as they bring in the happiness thoughts, then also pay attention to see if they can start to notice the distinction? That's lovely.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of people seem to be doing this these days. You ever been in a cafe or just even in a park, and people are sitting and their legs going like this? You notice
Yes.
that?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's trapped energy.
Yep.
So I've had clients do the relaxation, and then I say, do you notice that your leg is not moving now? And they're like, oh, wow, it's not. So I actually, through HeartMath, they have some what's called, it's works like biofeedback. And people can actually see when their body is incoherence. We call it heart-brain coherence.
Oh, interesting.
So there's like little games or things to concentrate on, and you're sync with your breathing, and it brings basically your heart and your brain into sync.
And what's so interesting about that to me is evolutionarily, like you said, the first thing to develop in utero, is the heart. And so the central nervous system is kind of an adjunct, or something that gets laid on top, the circulatory and the respiratory systems. So our breath and our circulatory systems are really at the heart. And evolutionarily, we are feeling beings that evolve to also think. We aren't thinking beings that evolve to also feel. And so that feeling center and, that polyvagal nervous system, that's all wrapped into our nervous and respiratory systems.
Mm-hmm.
That's where our emotional center really is. It's not the amygdala that's hidden in the brain. That's just like the central processing unit that it leads up to. But it's definitely all of us. Like we're walking, I've heard you say this before, like the mind body um, nomenclature that I think it was Deepak Chopra,
Mm,
that created it. Like he almost regrets that he separated it and how he said it, because then it
exactly.
gives people still this perpetuating idea that they're two separate systems, when in fact, I mean, we are walking brains, we are walking hearts, we are walking respiratory systems. It's not like our mind and our feeling states are separate. They're all integrated.
Yeah, it's fascinating and it's kind of sad. I mean, I attended a conference all um, focused on somatics, which simply means the body. And
Mm-hmm.
even there, they're still caught in. I remember someone talking about some body of work that they were bringing into the school, and it was something like where psychology intersects the body or something like that. It's like the intersection of psychology and somatics or something like that. And I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my gosh, that's not how this works.
um, we can get just so in that groove and we don't even
Mm-hmm.
recognize, like, what am I even saying?
Yeah. My favorite description of how this occurred is Dr. Candace Pert, and she's passed away. I think she passed away in 2015, young. But she was a neuroscientist
Mm,
and neurobiologist, and her description is that the church hijacked uh,
mm,
medical science early on, because Descartes, who wanted to look at dead bodies to see what the mechanics of the dead body, or of the body was, had to get permission from the church. And the church made him seal this deal that was that the spirit,
um,
the Catholic Church,
yeah,
that the
yeah.
spirit and soul are a separate thing. So the mind is a separate thing, essentially, from this mechanical body that's walking around in the world. And I mean, they shook on it because, wow, medical science, Western medical science wouldn't be what it was if that deal hadn't gotten struck. But unfortunately, it also set into motion this continued, in Western civilization, this continued belief that the two are very separate. No, they're not. Like the Eastern philosophies have it correct, and have been around
Right.
for millennia longer. But, well,
Yeah,
whatever. Like,
yeah. Exactly. Minor detail,
minor
right?
details, little small details. But I love how she describes that, because it's like, oh yeah, like you can study a lot about a butterfly when you pin it to a board, but you can study a lot about a butterfly if you let it keep flying around, and it's a very different experience of what you're looking at, right?
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
right. And to add to that, and I have not looked into it myself more, but in the heart math literature, it points to the study and the pursuit of more information or research around the heart was kind of coming in the late 1800s. And that's where psychology took over.
Yes.
Psychology kind of squashed it and took over. So there again, the mind became the most important thing that we were focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's very interesting.
It's very interesting. Now, I interrupted you. We
Yeah,
did
let me just do the
centering breath
second.
on the heart. We got to
Yeah,
number 2. So, yes, you
yeah.
keep going.
Thanks for keeping track. Okay, so the third practice that I suggest is what I call the LA hug. So you have to, and it's you hug yourself, and the L stands for love, and the A stands for acceptance.
Hmm.
So, I hug myself, I love and accept myself. Again, here, like we started a little earlier, and now I'm focusing on the physicality of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
With this intention, with the energy, with the qualities of love and acceptance, I'm connecting to my physical self.
Yeah. I love that. I mean,
being a therapist myself, I recognize what a somatic therapist you are, because you do always tune us all back to the body. I don't always do that in all of my practices. I do stay a little heady. So I
Yeah.
truly appreciate that, because it just gives it some resonance, some grounding, right? As a trauma therapist, I know how important that is. It's just to stay grounded. And physically, our body is the one thing that escapes no experience that we live. So if you keep grounding to your body, it really solidifies these practices that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And my intention is to, with this method that anybody can practice. I'm keeping it light at this stage because a lot of times, again, people are not aware of their bodies, and even just touch might stir something. So we're just
Mm-hmm.
keeping it. I love and accept myself. Just give yourself a hug.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and just think, well, the next part is the fourth practice is inviting in that loving self-talk.
Mm-hmm.
Again, and so front loading, let's have a lot of, think about what do you, maybe not even going back, what would I have liked to have heard, but what do you want to hear from, a friend, a family member, a client, a professional, a colleague? What are words that would light you up when someone says, "Oh, Natalie, man, you are so skilled. You are just so You're so informed. You're so professional. I love your work, and you seem like such a great person." Like, right? I mean, it
Yeah. That
feels
feels a
nice,
lot.
right?
That feels so good to hear stuff like that. Yes.
Yeah. And so, we can, what can be really helpful, as always, I believe, is, writing it down. Like, what are some of the
Mm.
words, like some phrases, some sentences that you so appreciate from someone else, and now we're going to just record that and
Mm-hmm.
give it to ourselves
Yeah.
so that it starts softening and dissolving the old self-talk of, oh, I made another mistake, I'm so stupid, oh, I forgot this thing again, I'm so forgetful, or like, especially as we get older, well, my body's breaking down. I need to find a pill to take care of this pain. I can't remember anything, because it's just part of getting older.
Yep.
This is all what we've been taught, and it is not true. It doesn't need to be true.
Right.
We can
Right.
still be, we can still have sharp minds and memories, and
Mm-hmm.
we can still learn new things, and it's all still possible for us.
Right. Exactly. And there's another thought I'm having about this, and that is it helps us to pattern interrupt, is how I would describe that, right? So limiting beliefs and negative, self-critical, negative thinking patterns are also programs, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
done it so many times repetitively that it's like pressing play on something. And what you're describing is, if I've written it down, and even if I have to pick up that item and reread it, it's a pattern
Sure.
disruptor to that old way of just like going into the automatic pattern of being negative towards myself. So there's something really powerful even about, again, grounding, even about that. Like, oh, I have to write it down. I have to look at it later, and I have to jog my, body and mind into a different thinking pattern from where I am when I'm having a difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And here too, you recognizing the energy of the words, not just I'm saying these words, I'm hearing them, auditorily, I'm speaking them, I'm reading them, but because our bodies are reacting all the time, we can just say something, some really simple ones are, I am valuable,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Mm-hmm.
am loving, I am lovable, I am loved. Um, I'm joyful. I'm learning. I know how to take care of myself. I choose to take good care of myself. All of that is
Yeah.
like, it's like a nice warm bath. And we just want to keep feeding that, keeping that warm bath like tapped off, not
Yep.
overflowing, but like nice and high, and
Mm-hmm.
just the way that we want it. I often refer to this as a reservoir of resource. So it's
Yes.
always there.
Yes.
And I totally, yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the interrupter, because often that's what we need to do. And we can have all of this resource, just it's already there.
Mm-hmm.
So that we catch ourselves, oh yeah, I've already got this. I've got this. I
Yep.
am providing this goodness for myself.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Cia, we could talk forever. We really could. I'll have to have you on again, because there's so many things that I think that conversations between the two of us would be just
Sure.
fun for my listeners.
Sure,
But I do. So
absolutely.
one of the things that I'm helping women in midlife with is this idea of feeling stuck. So, so
Mm.
often those patterns that we're referring to are the patterns of caring for everybody else. It builds in this idea of neglecting oneself, or even just becoming detached or dissociated, that you are a self that also needs caring and deserves your time and energy. So, what's your advice for women who are in that stuck place?
Well, I'd really like to kind of engage this with you.
Yeah, sure.
One thing I'm thinking about is let's say when you have a client and they're saying, I'm really stuck, if you bring up, are they feeling their feelings? Are you feeling your feelings? Are what's going on for you? Are you sad? Are you scared? Um, right? Do you feeling
Mm-hmm.
anxious?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like something that one example, I have a friend who her son, um, he became very ill, and part of it's addiction. He's hugely overweight. It's so sad because he's this really nice kid. I met him years ago when he wasn't in such a dire state yet.
Yeah.
And we met over lunch. He was up visiting her daughter, and we got together. And she would just do this sort of like almost mechanical self-talk. Well, um, I just, I can't have him in my home anymore because it's hurting me, it's hurting my health. And, he's just going to have to, I just don't know, but I just have to be strong. And, and I reached over and I just put my hand over hers,
Mm-hmm.
and she started to cry. She said, I never do that. I can't go there. I have to be strong. I said, you need to honor your feelings. This is your son. You
Yeah.
are sad. This is painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So
Mm-hmm.
with a time of conditioning of being strong and I can do this, we might be thinking I'm pushing through, but we're pushing through from the same place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the commonalities I'm thinking, and you did say this earlier about the observer self, between the strategy you're describing right there, and where I start with women is, well, you noticed it though. So let's work from that place. Wherever you are right now, where you're able to have the vantage point of, I feel stuck, that is the right place to be to formulate change. And what we're going to have to let go of is some of our old programmed beliefs that there is a right way to do this change, or there's a right road to be choosing. Instead, I just want you to, like, stay open to this idea that the future version of you who's living an unstuck life has all those answers for you. And all she is going to let you know is the next right thing to do. When you get
Mm-hmm.
centered, and we teach you some of these other, compassionate self-awareness, having compassion for yourself, how to step into your own power is really from that vantage point to keep asking yourself, and what's the next right thing for me to do? What would that future version of me who's living my best life tell me is the next thing to be doing in this moment here? But you have to have that observer self vantage point to know the
Right.
discomfort of, where I am is not okay, right? And you don't want to run to old behaviors like this lady would push through and stay strong, because we know that push through and stay strong are old, maps to old destinations she's already been. and it hasn't worked yet, or she wouldn't be sitting with you. And I say the same to the people that come to me. If you're feeling stuck and nothing has worked so far, but you have this inclination you're going to try an old habit, that's probably just because it's habit, right? Like, of course, those are the first things that occur to us. And old maps go to old known destinations. This new destination, it's off your map. You're charting new territory altogether. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And how much fear that elicits. Like, what? I don't know what, right?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, you're suggesting I do something I don't know. Like, you must be crazy. Like, if sometimes I'll even say, yeah, and I know you're sitting across from me, you're going, she's nuts. What the hell is she talking about?
What is she talking about?
So it was kind of inferred on what you in what you just said about taking those baby steps. What one small thing can you do that's different? And sometimes I even do this little cheat thing where it's just like, pick something. What would the opposite of it be? Because sometimes people are like, I have no idea. There's nothing I can do. Okay, let's just slow down. Pick one thing that you're pretty sure doesn't work. And what would the opposite of that be? Just to give it some opening, right?
Right. Exactly. Right. Oh, beautiful.
And
beautiful.
just do that. Just do that. That's it. We're not leaping ahead for any outcome. We're just like one small thing. And let's be as consistent as possible. And even when you're not, just notice, oops, I didn't today. Or I let this one slip by me. I did the same thing. Something else you kind of touched on earlier. This is building the awareness. Oh,
yes.
Right.
It is building the awareness. It's building and from a compassionate lens. Another thing that I really enjoy about all 4 of your steps is they do all come from that heart-centered space of coming back to yourself, but from a kind and compassionate lens. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
Well, how do my listeners find you, Cia? And where should all of these links will be in our notes, but where would you suggest that I send them to?
Sure. Well, my website is my name, Cia, CIA, middle initial A, Robles, ROBLES.com.
Good.
LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
I've started a newsletter.
Nice. That would be great.
It's something that is helping me. I think I mentioned that to you in our last meeting, our writers group. And I'm finding that, again, a little scary, a little challenging, but it's really like, Cia, come on now, this is what you teach, and this is one thing that you wanted to be consistent with for almost my whole life, really. I always had an inkling that I wanted to be a writer. And I used to take notes all the time, kept journals forever. And then just finally came through. I mean, I even had a period of time where I was interviewing people. It was always about self-care. I didn't really know that self-care back then in my 30s, I didn't really still understand that self-care was really self-love.
Yeah. It really is. Because it's an act of just self-nurturance at such an elemental level, because it's the kind of nurturing that makes us want to stay in a life instead of escape from a stress in a life or from whatever and I think the indulgences and go get yourself your nails done kind of ideas that Cosmo and some of these other ideas have come from media. That's about escaping life, and you and I both know that escaping your life is a coping mechanism that's not adaptive. It's adaptive in that it's letting you escape, but it's not one that's emotionally healthy for you. So self-care and self-nurturance really is an act of self-love, because it's about, how do I help, even in the really difficult times of this life of mine, how do I stay in it? How do I want to stay in it? That's really an important piece.
Right. And so, focusing on, I don't even like to say coming back to the breath, but focusing on your breath, just like you brought up again, centering in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us it lets us know where we are, and it lets us know if we hang in there just a little bit, we will it will also inform us of what we need. What do I need? Oh, I thought I needed a glass of wine. Well, maybe I'll have that too, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll
Yeah.
just sit with myself and have
Yeah.
some tea or go outside again, or even call a friend. But I think this might sound a little weird for some people, because sometimes calling a friend means I'm going to commiserate, right? Or going to complain.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, oh, this awful thing happened, and you're never going to believe this other thing. See how much you can hold for yourself first. This is where the healing happens. I can hold this pain, this sorrow, this anxiety, this fear, and really let it inform me of what I need from myself. So I can
Yep.
really show up for myself, because it can be easier to reach out, like, who's going to show up for me? Right. Right.
Yep.
And that's good. Of course, we need those friends. We need these people. But we need ourselves the most.
Yep. We do.
Our love, our care is that fine essence that, like you mentioned, the nurture, the nurturance. That's the only thing that can truly heal me. It's
Yeah.
not in a bottle. It's not even in a workshop. It might be with your therapist, though.
Might be.
But no.
Yep.
But your therapist, a good therapist, will show you, will help
Mm-hmm.
you, give you that kind of open-ended guidance to find your own self, so that you can know
Yeah.
what you need, and that support that initially does come from the outside a lot will continue to come from the outside some, but
Yes.
absolutely needs to be this fountain, this your own spark.
Yep.
It's coming from within, that we can generate and that we cultivate, so that it's always here for us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. My new theory is like, you are your life's purpose. That's as simple as it can be, right? We're not searching for a purpose outside of ourselves. We are the purpose of our life. And there will be lots of things and people and all sorts of stuff that get in alignment with that purpose at different seasons in our life. But the truth is, at the heart of all of it is us. We're the purpose that's been set forth for ourselves. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. I feel that way very similarly as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it looks a little different each season, but it's definitely
Yeah.
me that's right in the center of all of it. And maybe
That's
I look a
right.
little different each season. Now that I think
Yeah.
about that. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast, Cia. It's just been a pleasure having you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Natalie.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am so happy that I got to share that with you, and that Cia shared with us all of her 4 essential practices in depth, really gave us some great examples from her own practice, from her own life, and really helped us to embrace this idea that age is a number. We can be in middle age in our 70s if we want to. We can still be early adults if we want to in our 40s. That it all is really a matter of the mind more than it is a matter of the body. And she teaches us how to link to our body as a healing guide in our process, which I think is just amazing. And I also just want to highlight that she really did a great job of showing us why it's important to do this internal work. In psychology, we call it inner child work. But when we're rescuing the parts of us that have gotten left behind, that feel like it's too late, it really is a remarkable transformation when we're able to free and transform ourselves from those old patterns and programming in our thinking and in our feeling and in our being. So I hope on your journey to learn to love your story, this helped you get a little bit closer. All right, so I'm adding a little addition here. It's the legal stuff. Just so you're aware, nothing in any of these podcasts constitutes actual psychotherapy.
Yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, but everything here is just educational in nature and is a suggestion of things that you could be doing in your own life to learn how to love the life that you're in instead of waiting for a life that you're dreaming of to come towards you. So just remember, this is not therapy. And if ever you need any resources for mental health, look in my notes and I'll always have a little blurb at the bottom where you can click on a link and get those services for yourself.